The first sign that something was terribly wrong was the sound of the machine beeping again. Not once. Not twice. 3 sharp, humiliating beeps that echoed through the silent luxury boutique like a verdict. The cashier's polite smile stiffened. The people nearby slowed their steps, and the man holding the black card, worth more than most people's houses, felt his chest tighten as the word declined glowed red on the screen. He was a billionaire, a man who owned skyscrapers and companies across continents, and yet, in that moment, he stood frozen, powerless, and exposed. What happened next, what a poor little girl did, would change his life forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that even the smallest hearts can make the biggest difference, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Ethan Blackwood had built his empire from ambition and discipline, not luck. At 46, his name appeared regularly on business magazines, always beside words like visionary, ruthless, and unstoppable. He was used to people stepping aside when he entered a room, used to doors opening before he knocked. Money had become a silent language he spoke fluently. That was why the decline felt so violent. It wasn't just a transaction error. It was a crack in the image he'd spent decades constructing. The boutique, filled with soft lighting and expensive silence, suddenly felt too small. The tailored suit on his shoulders felt heavier. His assistant wasn't there. For the first time in years, Ethan was alone. No one in the store knew that 3 days earlier, every single one of his accounts had been temporarily frozen. A massive cyber fraud investigation had tangled his financial network, locking assets while auditors swarmed his companies. Lawyers had told him it would be resolved soon, that it was just procedure, but procedure didn't care about dignity. Procedure didn't care that he was trying to buy a simple gift, a scarf, nothing more. Something warm and elegant for his younger sister Lily, who lay pale and fragile in a charity hospital across town, fighting a disease that had already taken too much from her. Ethan had spent billions on acquisitions, but when Lily's health collapsed, money hadn't rushed in to save her. Years ago, when their parents died, Ethan had chosen ambition over family. He sent Lily to live with relatives, promising to come back for her. He never did. Now she was dying, and this scarf was his clumsy attempt at apology, and he couldn't even pay for it. The cashier cleared her throat, asking gently if he had another form of payment. Ethan shook his head, heat rising to his face. He muttered an apology and stepped back, ready to leave the scarf behind like another failure. That was when he noticed the little girl standing near the display rack, watching him with wide, thoughtful eyes. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her dress was faded, her shoes worn thin at the soles. She clutched a small canvas bag against her chest like it held something precious. Her hair was tied back unevenly, as if done by someone in a hurry. She didn't belong in a place like this, and yet she stood there, calm and curious, untouched by the tension that weighed on Ethan's shoulders. As Ethan turned to walk away, the girl stepped forward. Slowly, carefully, she reached into her bag with both hands, her movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. The boutique seemed to hold its breath. She pulled out a small bundle of coins and a few crumpled bills, held together by a rubber band stretched nearly to snapping. Without saying a word, she walked up to the counter and placed it down. The sound was soft, almost fragile, metal against glass. Silence followed. Ethan stared, unsure if he was imagining things. The cashier looked from the money to the girl, confused. The amount was nowhere near enough to pay for the scarf. Not even close. But the gesture landed with a weight that crushed Ethan's chest. He knelt down instinctively, his knees touching the polished floor he had never noticed before. The girl looked at him then, her eyes steady and serious. There was no pity in them, no fear, only certainty. She seemed to understand something he didn't, that this moment mattered more than numbers. The girl's name was Amara. She lived in the building behind the boutique, in a single room she shared with her mother and baby brother. Her father had died 2 years earlier in a factory accident that paid condolences but no future. Her mother cleaned houses when she could find work, and Amara collected bottles, did small errands, anything to help. The money in that bag was meant for medicine for her brother's cough. But that morning, before leaving home, Her mother had told her something that stuck in her heart. If you ever see someone hurting and you can help even a little, you should. Amara had seen Ethan hurting. Not the loud, obvious kind of pain, the quiet kind, the kind that sits heavy in the eyes. Ethan tried to refuse, his voice thick, but the girl shook her head gently. She pushed the money forward again. The cashier, blinking back tears, looked to Ethan for permission. He nodded, not because the money solved anything, but because accepting it felt like honoring something sacred. The manager came out moments later, having witnessed everything. He quietly told the cashier to complete the transaction. The scarf was wrapped, the receipt printed, and the little pile of coins was slid back into Amara's bag untouched. The store would cover the cost. Ethan barely registered it. He was still kneeling, still looking at the girl who had shattered something inside him. That night, Ethan sat beside Lily's hospital bed, the scarf draped gently around her thin shoulders. She smiled faintly, telling him it was beautiful. But what broke him was when she asked, softly, if he'd done something kind today. The question pierced deeper than any accusation. Ethan told her about the girl, about the coins, about how small the gesture was and how massive it felt. Lily squeezed his hand with surprising strength and whispered that maybe it wasn't too late for him after all. The days that followed were a reckoning. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Amara, about how easily she'd given what little she had, while he'd spent years hoarding more than he needed. When his accounts were unfrozen, the first thing he did wasn't reclaim power or control. It was search. He found her through the boutique manager, then through local outreach workers. When he finally stood in front of her building, the walls cracked and stained. He felt smaller than he ever had in his glass towers. He didn't arrive with cameras or press. He arrived alone. What Ethan did next wasn't a single grand gesture. It was a series of quiet decisions. He paid for Amara's brother's medical care. He ensured her mother had stable work with fair pay. He funded a community center in the neighborhood, one focused not on charity, but on opportunity, education, meals, safety. He visited often, not as a benefactor, but as a listener. And slowly, something changed in him too. Lily passed away peacefully months later, wrapped in warmth and forgiveness. At her memorial, Ethan spoke not about success, but about grace. About a little girl who reminded him what wealth really meant. He established a foundation in Lily's name, one dedicated to families overlooked and unheard. Years later, when people spoke of Ethan Blackwood, they still mentioned his fortune, but they also spoke of his presence, how he showed up, how he listened, how he knelt down when it mattered. Amara grew up knowing that her smallest act of kindness had rippled outward, touching lives she would never fully see. She never thought of herself as a hero. She simply remembered her mother's words and followed her heart. If this story touched you even a little, if it reminded you that kindness doesn't need permission or wealth, please take a moment now to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps these stories reach hearts that need them. And before this story ends, we have one special request. Please comment below with a single word, kindness, if you believe even the smallest act can change a life. Because sometimes, the world doesn't change when billionaires give more. It changes when a poor little girl gives everything she can.